Hi, Chris. How are you?
Doing well, and yourself?
I'm good. Thank you so much again for volunteering to be interviewed for the You're Needed campaign, which is to provide information to students of color who are very much underrepresented in certain finance or industries. More specifically, in this case, we're talking finance. So, can you start by telling me a little bit about yourself and why you chose to come to Holy Cross?
Yes. So a little bit about myself. Chris Morgan, class of 2016. Why I chose Holy Cross. Actually, before athletics was a thing, I didn't really know a lot about Holy Cross. Being from the southeastern area of Virginia, I was really more focused at schools within the region. And then with my recruitment process, I was introduced to Holy Cross through actually my coach is from my area back home. So he did some recruiting down in our area, introduced me to the college. And what ultimately led me to decide to go to Holy Cross was the academic rigor, but then also the athletic legacy that comes along with the basketball side of things. So I felt as far as, where I was at that point in my life, I was really getting the best of both worlds, where I would set myself up for a life outside of my really athletic identity, post-college, the best with a Holy Cross education, but also have a chance to, do something special with the athletic side of things at Holy Cross. So probably a different way of being introduced to the college than many, but, ultimately one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. I'm sorry. I just had all the questions up and I don't know where they went.
No worries.
Sorry, Ben. You're going to have to edit so much. All right. So in addition to basketball, while you were at Holy Cross, and could you also mention what you majored in, but what else were you involved in besides athletics?
Yeah, so outside of athletics, there were a couple of things that I spent a lot of time working on. And one of those projects was working for Worcester Service Organization that was founded by a buddy of mine, Jeff Rapucci, a few years back. And it's continued to grow and develop. So after about year one of that service organization, I was able to join in more as a volunteer and then as a site leader for a couple of years, which was a lot of fun. Got to meet some incredible people in the greater Worcester community, not only with Holy Cross directly, but also through the other schools in the city. In addition to that, obviously I played basketball. That took a lot of time outside of my academic life, and also was very actively involved in the Odyssey orientation program, which was the pre-orientation for a lot of students, first year college students as well, which for me was great because it worked really well with the schedule because it wasn't time consuming throughout the academic year. So it really took a lot of your time and effort before the school year started. So I was able to kind of still have that involvement without impacting, the balance between shuffling academics and athletics at the same time. But in addition to that, really just peer mentoring, senior gift committee, and the student athlete advisory committee. But again, more in the participant role in those. So it kept me busy. But at the end of the day, it was, they all had their very strategic piece of the puzzle, for making who I am after leaving HC.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. So can you tell us a little bit about the company and the role you are currently in, and how did you get to that point? What did you decide? What kind of made you decide that this was the direction you wanted to go in terms of a career?
Yeah, so in terms of the career, definitely took a different approach to, actually, you know what, I'm going to restart that question. Mm-hmm. How did I end up? Well, first I'm going to start saying where I'm in today and then how I got there. So I think that's more than fair. So how did I end up where I am today? First, I am a procurement manager here at Teknor Apex Company. We're based in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And actually, since being at this organization, I've sat in 3 different roles since joining the organization. And really how I got here was around first being open, but then being flexible. Mm-hmm. And I think that Holy Cross education that makes you a well-rounded thinker and a well-rounded problem solver has been really worthwhile throughout my career so far. So just to backtrack, I'd say as far as the process of how I ended up here, because it definitely wasn't a straight road. When I first was a student freshman at Holy Cross, I wanted to actually go into medicine and was on that track in the first year, hit that organic 1 roadblock in the second semester, and reconsidered. And I knew I had this entrepreneurial mindset, knew I wanted to probably get into business at some point in my life, even if it was outside of my formal career. So I switched towards economics. And a lot of folks actually focus more on the finance side of things. But after spending some time shadowing some folks in New York on the banking side, kind of realized that wasn't my cup of tea. Not that I couldn't have done it, but I just didn't love it necessarily. So I wanted to probably end up more on the business side of things, maybe in sales, maybe in operations, maybe in marketing, but something still involved in the business, but not banking specifically. So I had an opportunity to intern at Ocean Spray as a research analyst, and actually it was great because I was a research analyst for their procurement function within supply chain. Had a solid summer. I think it was mutually beneficial. Finished my project early, so I got to get my hands involved in a couple of different topics for the last full month. They invited me back, and then I joined as an assistant buyer. My first year, was promoted to an associate commodity manager. My next year, and then I was recruited out, joined Teknor back in early 2018, where I've held some North American-based roles and global-based roles, where now I sit as a global manager today. So it was definitely not your kind of straight line approach. I didn't know what I wanted to do immediately out, but just kind of in God's plan, the way things worked out, I was able to experience enough of different fields where I knew what I didn't like, and it kind of pointed me in the direction where I am today. If you were to ask me still now, is procurement my calling? Maybe, maybe not. We're going to kind of wait and see what happens there, because at some point I do want to explore other parts of the business more on the customer-facing sales side and see how that goes. So it's just how I ended up today, but I don't think this is the end of the journey by any means.
Yeah, and I think that's so important for students to hear too, because I think a lot of times, like, just mainstream, like, it sounds like your career path is like very straight and narrow, and it's in no way, shape, or form linear, and there's going to be a lot of challenges and a lot of things you don't like in order to figure out what you do like. So I think that's really important. Thank you. All right, so can you tell me a little bit about what is it like to be a person of color in finance, considering that, again, the number of people in finance who are, people of color is very low. So has your identity ever posed any challenges when trying to enter your career, or even more so, now that you're within your role?
Yeah, so I will say identity definitely has, it's an aspect of the day-to-day work as far as getting things done. I'd say as far as diversity is concerned, for some of the organizations that I've worked for, I've been the only one in some cases, and then I've been one of 2 in other cases. And, it can feel isolated at times, but at the end of the day, you have to be honest with yourself and really say, okay, why am I here? What are my goals, and how do I achieve those goals? And at the end of the day, once there's some leverage within your court as far as being a candidate in the employee market, some organizations are a lot better about diversity and inclusion than others. So you have that opportunity to apply for businesses or roles within organizations that are more open and understanding of the current climate that we're operating under today. But where that doesn't exist, you really have to turn a challenge into opportunity. And what I mean by that is having a different way of looking at problems, having a different way of having different personalities. It's really something that we can use as an opportunity to look at problems differently, provide a different solution, be an innovative thinker in your own way versus this cookie cutter approach that everyone else has because they don't have that same identity that you do. So, to answer the question without going into exhaustive detail, yes, it has provided some challenges that probably wouldn't have been met if I looked differently. But at the end of the day, we kind of have two options when we're faced with these. You can have the issue, take it head on and do something about it, or you can kind of have the issue and, not really do much. So, I think the biggest thing we can do is control what you can control and try to do the best with the resources that you have.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So kind of going off of that, what are some of the supports that you've had in place, both while you were, starting to search for roles when you were at Holy Cross and now within your career?
Yeah, the network is everything, and not just from a finding a role perspective, but being successful within that role. So I can kind of give a couple of examples. First, like you mentioned, when you're a student looking for opportunity, I was fortunate enough to, and not even fortunate, that's a blast, to have a friend in college whose parent worked for the company that I was going to intern at. And I was able to connect with him. He took time out of his day to sit down, go through some questions I might face during the interview. So really when it came from actually getting into the room for the interview, more or less, really having that confidence to be successful. Now, once the rubber hits the road and you're in the room, now it's on you. You got to show what you can bring, show the value that you can bring to the organization. And that's really where I'd say that continued relationship really matters. So having mentors, and they don't necessarily have to be mentors of color. Sometimes it helps. I personally have both. I'd say that are both very influential mentors to my success, where they keep you honest, and especially in that professional space where within our first 5 years it is still relatively new, because we are going from this world of academia throughout our entire lives into the more professional or MySpace business space. And it does take some adjusting, and having someone that you can honestly bounce ideas off of that's going to give you kind of the no BS feedback is probably the best way that I've been able to see some success. Because if you're headed in the right direction, headed in the wrong direction, excuse me, you'd rather be told you're doing something incorrectly and you can learn from it and fix it versus developing a bad habit. So I would say the networking and the mentorship has been absolutely it's been the reason why I'm in this seat today.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. You can't, the immense benefits from both like mentorship as well as a strong network, like can't get where you are without that. I wholeheartedly agree. So kind of going back a little bit. So you talked a little bit about the challenges that you have faced as a person of color within a industry where there's not a lot of people of color. Have you had any, have there been any opportunities kind of with regard to your identity rather than challenges in any capacity?
So I'll give one example, and it's actually kind of a two-parter. So like I mentioned before, kind of turning these challenges into opportunities and using your differences to your advantage has been one thing that's been very helpful. I think in addition to being a man of color in business, I also face the challenge of ageism in an older market. So I work in an industry today that is I'd say the median age is, or the mean age, I should say, is probably around 45, 50 years old.
Oh.
So even as far as my reporting team, you know, some of our reportees have children that are almost my age, you know, and it's one of those things of trying to make the most out of these opportunities when you receive them. So as far as a challenge, that has really been a kind of a two-part challenge. And really turning that into opportunity is bringing the energy that we still have earlier on in our careers. Really using the flexibility of our lives to our advantage, at least speaking personally. You know, I can't speak for all my classmates, but speaking personally, you know, don't have kids yet, not married, not really tied down to one place, one firm, but really using that to my advantage to say, oh, so the team needs someone to travel to see this customer. The team needs someone to travel to the supplier. Oh, well, I don't have a soccer game to go to tomorrow night. I can go. So like kind of throwing your hat out there to take on new projects, take on new initiatives, has been one way where I've kind of taken that challenge and used it to my advantage. But with that, yeah, I would have to say that's only really one example, probably of many, but just one where I kind of tied both the ageism and being a man of color, just facing those cultural differences that you might experience in different markets. Others, tech, probably don't experience any of that because it's a very diverse, very young, very high energy space. It's really just one area that I faced in the manufacturing space.
Yeah. That's interesting. I've never really thought about, like, in terms of industry, like those different, like, kind of the makeup. I mean, of course, like the makeup of, like, you know, who is working, but you're absolutely right. Like tech, or maybe even like the nonprofit industry, regardless of like what their, you know, goal is, like it's going to be a lot younger. So thank you. So switching gears a little bit. So what advice could you provide to students who are at Holy Cross right now, who are maybe interested in going by way of like finance or business when they exit or when they graduate Holy Cross?
Yeah, I think one would really be whatever you decide to go into it confidently. And understanding that you might not love what you're doing, but you have that ability to course correct. And I think being honest and upfront with your kind of internal stakeholders, your potential first boss, first manager, the whole nine, is one way of handling that. You know, across an organization, there are many different support functions. So if you come in, let's say, on the floor, on the trading floor, and you don't necessarily love what you do, well, you can bring your strengths to your team and say, here's my strengths, here's what I do well, here's what I'm comfortable with. Do you think this skill set will continue to help me grow in this space? Or should I look to course correct a little bit within my career trajectory? Mm-hmm. Another is really around not taking uneducated chances, but really kind of taking that step, getting a little bit out of your comfort zone. But when you do make mistakes, take them as growth opportunities and don't make that same mistake twice. I've never heard, at least from the teams that have managed me, I've never been disappointed in me in making a mistake. However, they will be disappointed in me making that same mistake twice. So really learn from, really take these kind of what some of us might view as negative feedback as constructive criticism, and just use it to keep building and going forward from there. And lastly is really taking the topic of trust seriously. And I don't think this is specific for just students of color. I think this is specific for anyone that's early on in any type of professional or even life relationship. Trust is continuously built over small occurrences. You know, we have a discussion, you say something in confidence, or you make a deadline that you're going to reach, and you make the deadline, and you continuously, you know, put these feathers in your cap building trust. And it can take months, years to build trust in someone, or to build trust in the system for that matter. And one broken promise can break that trust forever. So I'd say just sticking to being the person of your word, and really building that trust and respect with not just your teams, but also probably with some higher ups as well, is one thing that goes really far.
Awesome. Thank you. And then finally, last question, what do you wish you would have known as a student at Holy Cross that you know now?
I kind of smile because that's in hindsight's 2020. Mm-hmm. So what I've done, absolutely, I've done a lot of things differently.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I'm not really disappointed where I am. I think, you live and you grow, and some of these opportunities that come up, you make the most of them, you course correct. One thing I would have done better, Lord, I would have gotten better grades.
Me too.
I didn't do poorly by any means. Still finishing over a 3.0, but having the stronger grades opens up opportunities for the immediate future. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is it makes you as a more attractive candidate for day 0 after graduation, or for that first internship as a sophomore, or for that first internship as a junior. It looks really good then, and it can give you a nice little boost into the job market. Now, with that said, for my second move and whenever my third move takes place, that GPA is not going to matter. They're really going to check, did you graduate? Perfect. What were your grades? Just to see what type of student you were, but mm-hmm. It's not a deciding factor. They're more going to be curious with the value that you're going to bring to their organization, unless you're going back to grad school. So I would have to say, having some type of verbiage along with my diploma, cum laude, student cum laude, would have helped. So that's probably one thing I would have changed. Another is I don't think I started too late, but it would have never hurt to start earlier. Would just be networking in general.
Yeah.
You can never have too strong of a genuine network. So I think I really started taking mine seriously around the end of my sophomore year, kind of that summer, going forward. But if I would have started as a late freshman or early sophomore, that extra year could have helped. Might be a different situation right now. But again, not disappointed where I am by any means, but I think that could really go far, because that network is everything, once you're in industry.
Yeah. Awesome. Chris, this was excellent. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything you wish you want to cover? I asked all my questions.
I think that really covers about the main topics, but just a very brief story here on the networking side of things and just how important it is. So like I mentioned earlier in our call, the alumni, or I should say the parent of the current student that is now an alumni, helped me interview and prepare for my first, I'd say, formal internship through the through the Holy Cross office. And I will forever be grateful for that interview prep, because that interview prep ended up ultimately landing me the first opportunity at a job with Ocean Spray, mm-hmm. and then my first full-time position. And then I was able to use that as a step forward from there. Another would be some networking that I had that led to my current position. I was flying home for a good friend's wedding back in Virginia, and I was wearing a Holy Cross polo, I must admit. Sat down, lady sits next to me, she comments on my shirt, "Oh, did you go to Holy Cross?" Yeah, so we started chatting. All thanks Holy Cross. Her son played baseball at Michigan State, so we're talking college athletics. And then she's like, "What do you do?" So I'm in procurement for a food and beverage company. I buy plastic. Most of the time, the story stops there. pretty bland introduction, right?
I buy plastic.
And yeah, and she said, what type of plastic? Which no one usually asks that follow-up question, so I was a little concerned, but, continued on to the details.
Yeah.
And she's like, I work for this plastics compounding and manufacturing company. And we're based in Rhode Island, la-di-da. And we exchanged cards, great conversation from the time she sat down through baggage claim. She actually met my dad, who was picking me up from the airport. And I went to send her a thank you email just because he was driving me home at the time. I flipped her card over and it read her name, Chief Human Resource Officer, Teknor.
What a small world.
Quite the interview. So we remained in touch over the next 6 to 8 months. They had some early retirements. She's like, just come in for an interview. I was happy where I was. I came in for an interview. They had some pretty interesting opportunities for growth. So I decided to leave. And now we're here 3 years later. And again, just grateful. So I met her on a plane. And another networking story is I was able to meet a then director, now VP of a major pharmaceutical company. They're a Fortune 200, maybe Fortune 100 company.
Wow.
Met him on a bike path. The more you know.
You never know.
So,
you never know.
Yeah. You never know you're going to be around. I'd say really just kind of showing your best self in everything that you do, because you never know what opportunities might, present themselves. So that's probably the only, it's a quick story. That's probably the only other additional thing I'd like to add for the interview.
That's fascinating. Yeah. And I like to tell students too, like, your network will continue to ripple. So like, talk to everybody. You don't know who's who. You don't know who knows who. So, Chris, thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for the time. No, it's been great. And I'm looking forward to this series, especially for the other alumni that you guys are going to bring in. It's truly an honor to be a part of this. I was able to learn some of those skills through the alumni when I was a student. So, just again, forever grateful. I feel it's my duty to answer these calls whenever they come.
We appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Yeah.